Coming up, a motion to oust South Korea's Minister of Interior and Safety Lee Sang-min passes at the National Assembly, as the main opposition party believes him to be among those responsible for the deadly crowd crush in Itaewon in late October. The ruling party boycotted the vote, but opposition party was able to force it through as it holds a parliamentary majority. Bivalent vaccines now available in South Korea for everyone over 12 years old. This revision, coming as the easing of zero-COVID policy in China, could affect South Korea's over-the-counter drug supply related to COVID symptoms. Plus, the war in Ukraine intensifies with both exchanging attacks against each other's strongholds. Good morning. Welcome to New Day at Arirang. Our top story this morning, a motion calling for the dismissal of South Korea's Minister of the Interior and Safety, Lee Sang-min, was passed by the National Assembly yesterday. The opposition bloc pushed ahead with it, blaming the minister for the deadly crowd crush in Seoul back in October. The vote was boycotted by the ruling bloc, and President Yoon had previously suggested that it would not be the basis of any decision on the Interior Minister's future. Our Lee Kyung-eun leads us off this morning.
The National Assembly, spearheaded by the Democratic Party, passed a motion on Sunday calling for the dismissal of the Minister of the Interior and Safety, Lee Sang-min, over the crowd crush in Seoul in late October that killed more than 150 people. Amid a boycott by the People Power Party, whose members left the site, the DP used its supermajority to pass what is the second motion for the dismissal of a cabinet member since President Yoon Suk-yeol took office.
The crowd crush was caused by the government's negligence of its duty to protect public safety, and ultimate accountability lies with the Interior Minister.
The ruling party has been calling the situation nonsensical because they say reprimanding Minister Lee essentially draws conclusions from a parliamentary probe of the Itaewon incident, whose official activities have not yet even begun.
What was the point of agreeing to the plan for a parliamentary probe if you're going to destroy the very spirit of the agreement immediately?
The motion has no legal force to unseat the minister, and is almost certain to be rejected by President Yoon Suk-yeol, like it did with the dismissal motion for Foreign Minister Park Jin in September over controversy surrounding President Yoon's overseas trip. The passage of the dismissal motion was a shift in stance for the National Assembly Speaker, who had initially insisted that passing next year's budget was more urgent and should be done first. But with the rival parties' budget negotiations still stuck, the Speaker on Saturday decided to do it the other way around, given the motion's 72-hour deadline.
I've decided to put the motion up for a vote in order to keep the legally stipulated deadline for dismissal motions.
For the budget, Speaker Kim proposed that the rival parties draw up a compromise by the 15th. Key areas of contention are still spending cuts and tax revisions. Some observers are concerned, however, that Sunday's dismissal motion could intensify disputes in these areas and elsewhere. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Starting this Monday, bivalent COVID-19 vaccines will be available to everyone aged 12 and above. Until now, only those aged 18 and above had been eligible. But as the weather gets cold, the government has decided to make these shots available for more people. Our Shin Yeon with the details.
South Korea is trying to get through the winter without any more waves of COVID-19. How? By making new booster shots, also known as bivalent vaccines, available to more people. Specifically, anyone who's 12 years and older and who already had their primary shots at least 90 days ago. Reservations will be open from this Monday. Those who are able to find leftover vaccines can get their shots from this day. Others can book their shots, which will be given from December 19th. There are 2 bivalent vaccines made by Pfizer available. One against the original strain of COVID and the BA1 strain. The other to protect against the BA4 and BA5 strains. Health officials have been encouraging teens to get vaccinated, as data shows this age group is 3 to 5 times more vulnerable to getting infected with Omicron. Reinfection risks were 1.8 times greater among teens than adults. Teens currently make up nearly 1 out of 5 reinfection cases. But there are still many who first need to get their primary shots. Up till last Friday, only 66.5% of teens had completed their primary shots, and only 11.5% have received a regular booster shot. Officials say this is because many teens and their parents are worried about any side effects from the vaccines. Regardless, the officials are asking people to get their extra shots, as the colder weather means there's higher risk of infection. Health authorities are also concerned over stocks of cough medicine this winter, as some of the materials for cough medicine come from China. People in China are scrambling to buy cough medicine and face masks, fearing a spike in infections due to the recently eased COVID regulations. That's why Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety has asked local companies that have been importing raw materials from China to make cough medicine to take preparatory measures. They asked companies to make sure they secure enough raw materials before China eases regulations further. 신예은, Arirang News.
Ukraine and Russia are continuing to exchange attacks against each other's strongholds. In response, Russia says it's ramping up production of new generation weapons to protect itself from what it calls its enemies in Europe, the US and Australia. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Ukraine has launched multiple missile attacks on the Russian-occupied town of Melitopol, while also targeting the Russian-annexed Crimean Peninsula. All this as Russian drones attacked Ukraine's southern port city of Odessa. According to Ukrainian officials, 15 Russian drones were launched at Odessa and the surrounding region. The attacks mainly are targeting Ukraine's power grids and energy generation facilities. According to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, about 1.5 million people have been left without electricity in the Odessa region, while local officials urging residents whose homes rely only on electricity to leave. Ukraine continued its offensive on Saturday, this time attacking the occupied Melitopol region in the country's southeast. Pro-Russian authorities in the region say a missile attack killed 2 and wounded 10, while the exiled mayor said scores of invaders were killed. In response to Ukraine's attacks against Russian forces, the deputy head of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, said on Sunday that the country was ramping up production of new generation weapons to protect itself from enemies in Europe, the United States, and Australia. While he did not hint at what kind of weapons they were, Medvedev claimed the weapons were the most powerful means of destruction. His remarks come as Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly said Russia has been developing new types of weapons, including hypersonic ones. With Russia seemingly on the back foot in Ukraine, the military stalemate has raised fears in some circles that Moscow could resort to its nuclear arsenal to achieve a breakthrough. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency will make a 4-day visit to South Korea this week at the invitation of Seoul's Foreign Ministry. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi will visit Seoul from Tuesday to Friday, where he'll meet with Foreign Minister Park Jin and other senior government officials to discuss North Korea's nuclear development. Grossi is also expected to discuss Japan's plan to discharge radioactive water from its crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant into the ocean next spring. This week's visit marks Grossi's first visit to South Korea since taking office and the first trip to South Korea by an IAEA chief since September 2017. Last Friday, a more than 2-week-long strike by South Korea's trucker union finally came to an end. They were demanding a soon-to-expire minimum freight rate system to be made permanent and extended to other industries, as currently only cement and shipping container drivers get the benefit. The government took a hardline approach, sending them return-to-work orders, citing the economic disruptions caused by the collective action. With this, the momentum of the strike started to crumble, with the labor union members eventually voting to end it. So let's break down what this means with Professor Song Se-ryun of Kyunghee University Law School. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
The safe freight system was extended for another 3 years by the government. They're trying to push it from the government. So at least the truckers have what they want for the time being, but many see this as the truckers giving up. If you had to pick a winner, who would you say it was, the truckers or the government?
Well, the government stuck to its gun, as you said, and the trucker did not get what they wanted at all. So now the 3-year extension itself is in question somewhat. So it was a major setback for the truckers and KCTU, the umbrella union. But we should not look at it as a winning or losing proposition for either side. Trucker strike happened from unresolved and structural issues of safety and economic rights that truckers need at some level. For example, because of their status of their employment, they don't even get the minimum wage guarantee. So clearly, stopgap solution was needed. Now, if you force me to pick a winner or loser, I think the loser is a Korean economy that lost about $3 billion because of the strike and stoppage.
Right, and it took a huge toll on the economy, but we have to kind of think about the other strikes going on. I mean, not just Korea, but globally, there's a lot of strikes. And do you think this move by truckers will affect the other strikes going on in South Korea, seeing what the government did?
In South Korea, clearly, I think that it is now clear that the government will not tolerate unlawful work stoppage. So any haphazard strikes would not get the result they used to get, for example, in the last administration. Some people speculate that the Korea has come to a kind of a Reagan moment or a Thatcher moment that they went through in the 80s. They shook up the power balance between labor union and the government. But also, this could be an episode that hardens the battle line in the labor movement in Korea. So it's kind of a tricky situation. More broadly, though, this could be a harbinger of a labor reform movement that this administration has pledged during the presidential election. So more substantive conflict might be looming. And because of that, I think that looking for the solution, long-term solution, is more pressing matter.
Right, and you did mention this before in your first answer about the situation the truckers are in. So I want to bring light to the safe freight rate system itself more with you. It does seem like sometimes the truckers may not be paid the minimum wage and that the minimum rate has been set, which some people might say it's against capitalism or the sense of competition. But are there any other industries in South Korea that have a similar system that we can refer to? And since the 3-year extension will now take effect, will this impact other industries as well?
Well, the special employment worker status sort of fall through the crack in the fabric of legislative environment related to labor. They work like employees, but classified as a private business operators. So they suffer through long hours and not enough protection for labor standards and so on and so forth. And there are about 12 other similar occupations, such as delivery workers, private tutors, insurance salesmen, and so on and so forth. So they need the protection and labor rights of assembly and collective action as the Constitution guarantees. So this really requires, not only for the truckers, but for the Korean economy, a more permanent protection scheme that the legislators have to come up with. And now it seems like they're just put it off for another 3 years. And that is not a good job for anybody. And if this does not get resolved and the problem persists, I think that we all lose. But if we can find a solution the government, management, the workers can agree on, we all win, which obviously is a much better outcome.
Right, and Professor, before you go, we still have a couple of minutes, and I wanted to bring this light as well. The ILO actually kind of pressure the South Korean government, saying, could you give us the logic behind the return to work orders? And in your view, like you said, they're under special employment. Was the strike at least justified, and was it not legally justified like the government had claimed before?
Well, there are several reasons why the strike happened. First of all, this COVID economy and this economic situation hit us all. But second, there was a structural problem that persisted, as I mentioned before. And third, I think there is a kind of a political dimension to it. The labor union wanted to kind of test the metal, maybe, and maybe going back to their strength of unified action to get what they want. But it seems like the landscape has changed, and it's pretty clear that the government will be pretty hard-lined about it. And I just hope that they, not just the hardline, but looking for an active and very good solution, bringing into the dialogue table not only the legislators and parties, but the management and the workers. There's a scheme to talk to each other in place anyway. So I think that should be the direction to go.
Right, and as you've mentioned, the economy took a huge toll, and we do have the economy at stake with every strike that happens in the country. Well, thank you so much for your insights this morning, Professor, and I hope you have a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you.
South Korean investors are turning to alternative assets such as music copyright, luxury watches, and artworks. As they can be quite expensive, many turn to fractional ownership so they can invest in a relatively low cost. Our Shin Se-byuk zooms in on this trend.
The more people stream the music, the more money you make. How is that possible? By owning the copyright. Not all, but part of it. This is what's called fractional ownership. It's a percentage share of an expensive asset, such as real estate or aircraft. For example, imagine buying a building worth $1 million with 100 people sharing the ownership by each paying $10,000. This investment method is in the spotlight because it allows investors to acquire assets at relatively affordable prices. And music copyright is one great example. This company acquires a song's copyright from the original creators and puts a portion of the copyright for auction. People can buy and sell ownership stakes and then receive a share of royalties. The company explains that this offers better advantages to investors compared to traditional investments such as in real estate and stocks.
It generates a largely predictable and stable royalty inflows, which has very low correlations to other investment assets. Streaming revenues are only impacted by the number of listeners who listen to a song.
Another alternative asset you can invest in are works of art. This piece, for example, cost over $700,000, but fractional ownership would allow you to own part of it by paying under $800. With fractional investing, the company buys artwork along with multiple investors. After a certain period of time, the company resells the pieces and splits the profits with investors. The company says that the art industry could benefit from this system.
The art market has had only limited demand from rich people because artwork tends to have sky-high prices. But now, with more opportunities given to the general public to participate in auctions, we can expect great liquidity in the market.
From cars to luxury watches, investors in Korea are eyeing new alternative investments. However, an expert warns that individual investors need to take caution as this is a new industry.
When companies auction off goods, they suggest the price of each share. Before investing, investors must thoroughly review the company's pricing model to see where those prices came from and if they're reasonably calculated.
Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley standing by at the Arirang newsroom. Good morning.
Good morning, Doyon.
Let's start with NASA's Artemis 1 mission as the Orion spacecraft has come back to Earth after traveling in space for more than 3 weeks. Tell us the latest.
Well, that is right. It is mission accomplished after the unmanned spacecraft splashed down in the Pacific Ocean off the south coast of Mexico on Sunday local time. Now, the landing happened to fall on the 50th anniversary of the last time astronauts walked the moon. The landing was part of the Artemis 1 mission, a moon orbiting journey meant as a stepping stone to bring humans back to the moon before the end of the decade as part of the broader Artemis program. Now, with 3 test mannequin passengers in tow, the Orion capsule covered a distance of around 2 million kilometers over 25 days, while orbiting the moon and collecting data. The landing also saw the testing of Orion's heat shields and the use of a new landing technique called skip entry. Now turning to Italy now, where 3 women have been killed in a shooting in Rome. The shooting incident took place on Sunday local time when a gunman entered a cafe and opened fire on a meeting of apartment block residents. At least 4 others have been wounded, one of them seriously. Among those killed was a friend of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and police have arrested a 57-year-old suspect with an alleged history of making threats against members of the Residents' Association. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Meloni has said that a gun range where the firearm is believed to have been taken from has been closed and is being investigated. Now, 34 years after the 1988 bombing of the Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, a Libyan intelligence official accused of making the bomb has been taken into U.S. custody. The U.S. initially announced these charges against Abu Ajila Massoud in December 2020. But at the time, Massoud was serving a 5-year jail sentence in Libya over bomb-making charges. However, last month, he was reportedly kidnapped from his home by a militia group who are believed to have handed him over to U.S. authorities. Although Massoud is the 3rd Libyan intelligence official charged by the U.S. in connection to the bombing, he'll be the first to stand trial in an American courtroom. The bombing of the Boeing 747 bound to New York from London killed all 259 passengers and crew, as well as 11 people on the ground. And in our final story, runners from around the world took to the streets to spread Christmas cheer over the weekend. Just outside Paris, 2,000 runners donned Santa Claus costumes for the 10-kilometer run of the 44th Christmas corrida in Issy-les-Moulineaux. The Hungarian capital, Budapest, also had a festive run, which saw roughly 40 participants face freezing temperatures in Santa hats and red bathing suits for the 90th Budapest Naked Santa Run. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, hundreds of Santa Claus runners took part in the capital's 4th Santa Fun Run.
Good morning. Please expect a mix of rain and snow from late this afternoon. Gyeonggi-do and West Gangwon-do provinces could see 1 to 5 centimeters of snowfall, possibly into this evening. The rest of the country is forecast to see less than 5 millimeters of light rain, which could make roads icy by the time you head back home in some parts of the country. So please have a small umbrella handy as well. And today's precipitation will bring a wave of biting cold to the country. We are expecting a sharp drop in readings from tomorrow afternoon, and Wednesday could bring morning temperatures of minus 10 degrees Celsius here in the capital, and it's going to remain bitterly cold through the end of the work week. So we need to stay bundled this week with mid-winter-like temperatures in the forecast with a chance for cold wave alerts. But today's temperatures will stay on the variable side. Afternoon highs will be similar to slightly lower than yesterday. Seoul topping out at 5 degrees, Daegu at 9 degrees under murky skies in most parts of the country. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And that wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for our Tuesday's edition at the same time. Please stay with us for more updates throughout the day. Have a lovely day or evening, wherever you are, and take care.
animation loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children.